Hey everyone, my name is Heather Havenwood and welcome to Uncaged. This is going to be a very cool episode. So as you know, I'm Heather Havenwood. I'm sitting here in St. Pete, Florida, but I'm going to be talking to someone that's way across the pond. I don't even know where you're at, Heather. Are you in Monaco or are you in UK? I didn't ask you.
Monaco.
Monaco. I love that. It's
Yeah.
very rare that I get to talk to people around the world. So I'm super excited about that. So Hither, we have Hither Mann, and I love that Hither and Heather, and I'm saying that wrong. Am I saying that right? Like I'm a text it.
Perfect. It's perfect. It works. Most people call me Heather, so I'm glad we got a real Heather on the show. It's fun.
Yes. Well, I'm laughing because I'm sitting here like so nervous about your name because I'm Texan and I had the like Hither thing going on, and I'm like, I don't think that's correct in the over the pond way. So Hither Mann is the world's first female financial trader, which is super cool, and educators on a mission to raise the profiles of females in the world of finance and business. Her biggest question is, why is the richest person on the planet not a female? Girl, you and I are same wavelength. So I want people to know how I like ran across you. You and I were on stages together in Clubhouse a lot. And then there was this one day, I don't know how, but you came on my feed on Instagram. And then I like lovingly stalked you for about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And,
Thank you. I'm honored.
right. I know. I'm kind of honored when people stalk me too. So I just stalked you for about 2 hours and I started to read your posts, right? To really read your posts. And I thought, wow, I really love where you're coming from, like your mission and where you're going. I think sometimes we don't really know where people are headed. We see a lot of glitter and glam on Instagram, on Clubhouse, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. We see a lot of glitter glam and we kind of just wonder, is this person real? And so when I was going through your Instagram, I'm reading your feeds. I went to some of your reels. I'm looking at your cute little dog. I'm wanting to get a feel for you. And I thought, I really like this person. I want to get to know her deeper. And I reached out to your team and you've just been so awesome. So I just want to let's set the stage of that, because so many times I think people are just nervous to reach out to people on Instagram, and I just reached out to your team and you've been awesome. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you.
Thank you. And just for being proactive, because that's exactly what I always tell people. Please reach out and, DM my team messages back. And I'm so glad we did connect because you're a great female and a person, full stop. So yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation, no doubt.
It's going to be a fun conversation. So the first thing we did when we chatted really early in the morning on my end was we were talking about female entrepreneurship and just women wanting to be sovereign. And there was a particular post, like I said, I stalked you for about 2 hours. There was a particular post that you wrote. And what I remember about it and the text was about that you had a woman and come through your program and you were super excited about it. You had so much reverence for her and her future. And then she took off for a very long vacation and didn't show up any of the calls and then was kind of whatever, complaining. And you're like, why do women do that? I totally resonated with that, because you and I are one of those people, we know what it takes to be able to grow. We're not against vacations, of course not. And if you're going to take something on and be coachable and say, I'm going to dive into something totally new, like trading or real estate, you've got to be open, prepared, and present and not going on a vacation. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you picked up on that, because that's such a significant issue with some of the females I coach. And I coach men and women, but I prefer, and I have a secret flag flying for every female that I ever coach. And this was one of them. So she was coming through for exactly what you said. She wanted business coaching. Actually, she's a financial advisor, and you know me, I'm trying to raise the profile of women in finance to feel more comfortable, more powerful in this. And I had a plan, and it was so easy to get her revenue from, let's say, 10,000 a month, which is not the highest, to, a solid 50, 100, that was a first milestone, second milestone. And I've done that with many people in their industries, but they've been men. I've done it with some females, but this lady, she was like, yes, I need this, I want to do this. And then instantly the next week she goes on a holiday. It's the timing of the whole thing was my real frustration, because excuse me, she just went away for 3 weeks. And then when it came to my team reaching out to her and saying, well, your next coaching is happening. The strategy call is here. Where are you? She said, I just can't do it. My family issue, making up a story. There's no family issues.
Right.
Just I'm on a 3-month holiday. You can see from my Instagram. But I just get frustrated. I'm not making a personal dig, but this could be any female. And I'm thinking, why do they hold back? There's a sabotage. So I know exactly what's going on. They are not that committed to making money. I have a feeling women don't even like the concept of being wealthy as much as men. They like,
wow, oh my God, hold on. That is like interesting to look at for just a second. Say that again.
I honestly have obsessed over it. Women might say they want to be wealthy, but they 100% don't actually want to be, like, to a high level. They might be okay with 10K a month, maybe just 20. But, when I'm talking about, let's get to 100, 200K a month, I get men to do that. But women say they want to be billionaires. They might even use that word, but they will never follow through. Never. Even
okay, I want to ask you a question. This is so good. This is so juicy. Okay, I have this concept. I have something similar. I just say it differently. This is my theory, and I've never talked about this publicly, but here's my theory. Now, I grew up in the States, and we grew up with Disney inundated in our lives at a very young age. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all the crap, right? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And here's my theory. I've no research other than my own life and people's lives around me, is that men are taught, little boys are taught somewhere along the way at a very young age to be a provider. Women are never taught to be a provider from the beginning. Dates, men open the door, or men will pay, like, such an early age. It's almost like ingrained. And I thought, what if we were actually starting to train women or teach women to be a provider? What do you say about that?
Oh my God, that's a real game changer, because you're so right. I have actually studied women and, Melinda Gates actually does a really good book on this. So, and there's so many books. I've got a few books on that shelf that are dedicated to why women are poorer than men. That's one of the titles. So you guys can find that and read it, because it does reveal a lot. But historically, you're very right. We've been conditioned the wrong material. So the Disney, the Hollywood, everything that we're just subconsciously taking in has been the male superheroes, and the damsel in distress and the princess kind of being saved. Of course, it's changing. And we had even Marvel coming through with a female superhero for the first time. In fact, they asked me to comment on it. That's why I know so much, because they were like, what do you think of this? And that's exactly what we need to change. So I'm glad that actually Disney is changing. They're becoming a lot more diverse and different and inclusive in their content. And young kids need to be, and actually the second really important part is the parenting, because Disney aside and all the television and whatever else external stimuli aside, our parenting has to change. For example, I know when people ask me, how come you're so relentless? Because I didn't have any brothers, and my dad treated me like one of the boys, and I preferred hanging out with the boys, because I found the girls playing with the Barbie dolls. I had Barbie dolls, don't get me wrong, but I just enjoyed the competition. And when I've spoken to high executives in banks that I coached in the past, and they're female, there's like 1 or 2 token females in this industry. And when I've asked them, why do you think you are just such a rarity? They've said exactly the fact that they were competitive as young females, and they were competing with the boys, whereas they notice young children, particularly girls, are not trained to be that competitive. It's almost a bit vulgar, and it's like, oh, don't worry, just, this whole participation trophy nonsense. But competing to be number one is important, and competing with the boys. I hate anything that is not co-ed in, single sex schools. I'm against those for women. Obviously the boys continue at the old boys club, but I don't like girls' schools. And I think that's half the problem too. I didn't go to one.
That's a big one. We don't have a lot of that in the States. The girls and boys club, we do, of course. But I think that what is interesting too is women, at least for me, we were not taught to compete competitively. There's a difference. So I was in drill team and things like this where we were competing, but it was negative competing, versus if I was in football or baseball, we were competing against a team, whatever the other team was, and then we were competing within ourselves. We had sportsmanship. that was not taught, at least when I was growing up, that wasn't taught in my world. It was more conniving, backstabbing, kind of competing, right? Not like we're on the same team and I'm first string and you're third string this week because I played better than you this week. And that incentivizes you to get better. It was more like cutthroat, behind the scenes political crap. And it really bothered me. I grew up with my mom and my sister, and we were very competitive. And because there was no male in the house, it was more, we were very, my sister and I are very more masculine. I think we just took that on.
Great. That's great.
And my father was an entrepreneur, and all I ever talked to my father about was business, right? Business and army and business and army. And I think that's what kind of drove me to where I'm at today. But I think this word, right, called being a provider, can you imagine if there was like women walking around going, who I want to be is be the provider of my family?
I've never heard that one. It's such an amazing concept. And I really feel that if women were okay with that, I guarantee 99% would be like, oh my God, no, I don't want to be that person. It doesn't feel attractive enough. And I don't want to, which guy's going to accept that? So it is such a big statement. And I think it's a very good one, because
I think that's the thing that's missing is like, because if you think about being a provider, there's so much goodness there, right? Being a provider could be financially, could be mentally, could be whatever, but we're talking financial for a second. Being that provider financially is such a positive, but it's only recently in the last like couple of months that I've been taking that on energetically, and then kind of energetically, not talking about, I'm not talked about until now, is like, what would that be like if little girls right now were taught to be a provider for themselves and their family?
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to put it, because to be honest, now that you say it the way you just did, my dad actually made me become a provider, because he used to always say, which one of my children is going to buy me a Mercedes Benz, or so he kind of like almost made it like we have to be wealthy, because we didn't have money growing up. So I knew from the age of 9 that I had to be super wealthy too, because my dad made me feel like that was the only possibility for success. I'm not saying that's the best parenting, but he actually instilled that you need to be a provider as soon as possible. You need to help provide for the family. And I did. As soon as I could have money and income, at 16, I had to wait, legally when I could work. I know people work younger, but I was paying for my school, my sister's school uniform, and she was 5 years younger than me. So, stuff like that. I started helping out with the bills, and I became a real provider. Ever since then, I've always paid towards things, and then I bought them the whole of their lifestyle. And even now, like if they need something from the 3 of us, 3 girls that they have, they look to me because I'm still the provider. So, I didn't have parents growing up. I always argue I had kids. So there you go.
I totally relate. To that. So I want to kind of shift the conversation, because if women were being the provider, you talk a lot about what you do for trading and real estate. And you and I talked in the green room last time about my real estate investing career, and then how I'm really moving in I desire to move into trading. It's one of the reasons why I seeked you out, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a female that I could actually learn from trading. I always tell myself privately, if I could tell the younger me when I was like 16, totally lost. I was totally lost, of course. I mean, who isn't when they're 16? But I was kind of trained by not my father, but other people around me, which was really about my job was to still look cute, look pretty, get married, and have pregnancy. Like that was the training as a Texan Baptist girl.
Wow.
But I had to fight that a lot most of my young adult life, because something was different about me. I didn't want that. So it was always this like, what's wrong with me kind of thing. But if I could go back to my 16-year-old self or 18-year-old self, I think I would have told her, go to New York and become a trader. Like I've always been very drawn to trading, but I've never been taught. I've tried sometimes to try to teach like, you know what I mean? No one's ever going, Heather, you can do this. Go to New York and be a trader as a female. They're like, no, like get pregnant by some guy when you're 20 so you can have kids. I'm like, why would I do that? Anyway. So But I didn't know where to go. I was like, why would I just be fighting that versus like actually going? If I could do that, like people go, what could you tell yourself when you're 19? I'm like, I would have gone to New York with nothing and I would have become a trader so I could learn the skill,
Yeah.
like the skill and the mindset and that kind of competition. I'd love to ask you the question, how did you get into that and kind of what are you doing now with trading?
Oh, it's you know what, that I wish I could do that when I was 19. I had no interest whatsoever in this industry. It was just like, okay, people want to be wealthy, property. You know, I was a medical professional and blah, blah, blah. So I changed my career and went into full-time investing in real estate initially. However, when 2008 happened, I was still very wealthy in property and nothing changed for me, except that people were not buying aggressively. So I had to, like, you know, just calm down a bit. And then it was at that moment. So how I got into it was my mortgage broker, which is the person who was providing me the finance to buy property. He was obviously struggling to provide me any more finance. And it was him. He went into financial trading because it's a male thing, right? Male dominated for sure. And me and him were like best friends. I'd walk into the office and it was him sitting there and he was on these charts. And I said, what on earth are you doing? And he introduced me to the world of financial trading. And I saw how it looked easy. You know, I thought, okay, he's just made just about £1,000 on a 10 grand account. That looks easy and obviously very naive. I thought I could do that every day without at 10:30 in the morning and in pajamas, perhaps, you know. So the concept started there. It didn't end there. I tried it myself, lost a lot of money because when I went on Google, I didn't realize everything I was reading was like the bad stuff and you can lose so much. Then eventually I lost 200 grand in 2 days. That was a turning point for me. And then at that point, I thought, how did I get good at property? And it was learning from people that were older than me, better than me, etc. So I thought, right, I'm going to find a trader in London. So like the Wall Street equivalent, I went to the London Wall Street equivalent. And actually, I went through the back avenue, which is you go through an institutional broker, which is the middleman between you, the bank, the trading or the hedge fund, and between a hedge fund and a bank, there is something called an institutional broker. They are very easy to find. You can Google them. And anyway, I had £8 million worth of money sitting in a fund that I had and two other investors had put together from my property wealth. And so I literally bought my way in. So I said, which guy, I went to the brokers and said, I will give you this money because brokers love money because they make money from transactions. And I said, I will only give it to you and place it with your firm if you give me the names of top 5 traders, the best 5 you've got in the city of London. And they obviously thought, oh, she's got us in a position where we can't say no. So they gave me names, introductions. I would never have found these names. And I tell people, you can still do this today. You obviously probably have to put in a bit more money because the leverage is, you know, inflation. 8 million is not worth as much now, but ultimately that's how I found them. And I went with one of the 5 people. All 5 of them I still have on my phone book still, but one of them became my mentor. Not in the way like he takes me under the wing and says, here, sit down, I'll give you a book on how to trade. Oh my God, the guy was ruthless. I could write a book on that experience. He was exactly what you see in the movies. Really alpha, not like the Wolf of Wall Street, but really cutthroat, like no emotions, just like he actually did a sort of mental training on me of rejection. He kind of constantly tortured me mentally until he realized this woman will not break. And it was on a business point of view, you know, like if I was 1 minute late for a meeting, he would just disappear. He would be speaking to me on Skype because that was a thing. And we'd speak every day because I was like trying to learn from them, you know, like be his little shadow assistant and constantly trying to figure out, because he did not want to teach me. He thought she might be interested, but she hasn't got what it takes. And he wouldn't even say hello. He wouldn't say goodbye. So he'd just leave you hanging. Like you would have to start the conversation in a way that would interest him. I would say something like, oh, I think the euro dollar is going to do this today. That would be the kind of strike a conversation line I had to open with. Otherwise, I mean, like it was such a good training when I look back at it. He made me so tough and critiqued my natural style of trading because I thought I had a type of style. And eventually, oh my God, eventually it took, I mean, the story of how he actually tried to teach me everything. It was so funny. He knew that I'm not an alcohol drinker. I'm not someone who drinks just because I just get tipsy and I just can't handle it. I'm a lightweight. So I'm someone who's a control freak. I want to be like in charge. So what does someone like him do? He, on purpose, because he was managing my money, so he had to report to me every now and then. And I would love these client meetups because I would learn and ask him all these questions about the charts. Okay, so would you go long here? Would you go short here? And one day he said, oh, come on, HM. He never called me by my name. He'd always call me HM because no emotion in this game. He said, come on, have a drink. And he would force me to have he said, stop being such a nerd with these green teas, have a cocktail. So he forced me to have like, I don't know which cocktail, some sort of cocktail, which was good. And I was like, oh my God, I'm tipsy. And then he tried to get me to have another one. And at that point he knew, okay, she's now really like probably not quite up there. And then he said, oh, by the way, you know that thing you really wanted to know about trading that people have waited 8 years to learn, etc. He goes, I'm going to teach it to you now. He was hoping that I would be like broken and be like complete. And something in my mind is relentless. I channeled in and I was like, got the notepad out because this was, I had a notepad with me, and he wrote it out and he said, all right, then let's see if you can do the 3 examples of that. And I did, I nailed it. And he was like, at that point, he literally said, hey, Chem, I've got to give it to you. I didn't think you'd learn that so quick. And people have not learned that after 8 years in the industry, and you learned it drunk or tipsy, very tipsy, and in literally like 15 minutes. And so he really tortured me, like the guy was not easy to work with. But at that point onwards, he became my best friend, like my mentee, like my mentor. I'm his mentee. And we never looked back. And this is back in 2009, 10. So it's been that long since.
Wow.
Tortured me, but it worked. It's not.
Well, I understand that. I completely, what a cool story. What an awesome opportunity. And so with him, that's where you started to learn. And now when did you launch Fortune Academy?
So after I learned it from him, I was already like shadowing him since 2009, like crazy, and making money myself with mistakes. After he taught me everything in 2009 onwards, I mastered it. I'd say by 2012, I had mastered it. And I was like, retired, financially free. I was already done that through property, but this time I had done it a second time through financial markets. And then 2012, I went to a big National Achievers Congress, which is like a, big speaking convention, and 10,000 people in the room, 3 days. I was excited to see the speakers. Donald Trump featured, there was like lots of other billionaires featuring, and there was one female, and I was like, okay, there's just one female. I cannot wait to hear what she's going to talk about. Excuse me. And she spoke about how to dress. And this, I know, and me and you in that type of audience would be pissed. I was super pissed. I literally spoke to her. Yeah, and I was like, what is this nonsense? Like, there was trade people, there was a male talking about it. There were so many great topics, all led by men. Every money-making topic was led by a male. And then this female, which I thought would do something similar, spoke about the most pointless thing, in my opinion. And I went to the promoter and said, why have you got a female like that? There are better women in the world. I know, because, I've come across some, not exactly like me, but some, like, I'm sure there's better and millions better. And he said, it's your fault. He said, because I know you. And he'd followed me on like social Facebook at the time, just little bits of pieces.
What was his reasoning? I didn't understand. What is his reasoning for not having more than one female?
Because to be honest, he said that women don't exist that are in your industry. He said,
okay, that drives me crazy. Stop there for a second. I had that because I was in the speaking industry running around their learning annex. I don't know if they have that in the UK, and I was around, did a lot of those events. I was like at the event and helping. And I would say, why are there no women? And this is the true story I got was women can't sell from stage and women aren't interested in making money.
Oh, so frustrating. But then he did say to me, I know you make money and I know that you could do really well. And he actually said, between you and the guy that's talking about financial trading, I'd pick you. You're more marketable. And that's actually the only good thing that came out that event. He put that seed in my mind. And then from that point on, I was like, I have to do it for women because, I was complaining about what I didn't like, but that phrase, you have to be the change you want to see. So I did the uncomfortable and became a public speaker from that point on. And I've never looked back, to be honest. It's helped my business career because I opened doors to more institutional investors because social media resonates. And, you know, the people I'm helping, it's been incredible. Women really do need that female role model.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's why I lovingly stalked you, right? Because to me, you're a rare gem. And I wanted to see if you're credible, right? Because it was like, is this bullshit, right? Because I stalked you, I did.
thank
And
you.
that comes, and I, in lovingly way, right? But because, I've come from the speaking world for almost 20 years. And I was told things like women don't want to sell. My favorite was, I'm not going to say the names of these companies, but I was flown into a very big financial information marketing company. And they wanted me to look at being a VP for one of their brands. And I was a great fit, but I was kind of interviewing them because it was a very male business, masculine business, which is fine. But I started asking questions like, why are there not more female VPs? Why, I just started like kind of tapping around. And I remember the main guy who was kind of above the person who were asking me to come. He said, because women aren't interested in making money. And I was like, this is, by the way, like 4 years ago, right? For
Incredible.
COVID. And I just like, I knew at that point, I was never going to be successful in their atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's not that I couldn't, but it was like, I didn't want the fight because I was fighting up against a particular mentality that it was like, I'm not going to go make you a lot of money when you're not going to even look at me as someone who wants to like do that. So I was like, I'm out. I left the situation and I'm glad I did. And again, it's not because I wasn't up for the challenge. It was just like the mentality of that space was like that. And it wasn't going to serve me at that time. Right. So I was like, what's the point? And they weren't going to give me enough money either. So there's that too.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things to look at, and I don't think he was being an asshole. Honestly, I think he was just speaking like what he sees. He's just like, this is just what I see. Women aren't interested in making money. He wasn't being conniving or rude. He just like, this is just fact.
And
I'm like,
unfortunately, I have to agree with some.
yeah,
of it,
I know.
And
Right.
like I said, we know that there's not many of the powerhouse like you and I that are just comfortable in that space. But this is why these conversations need to happen. And I know that the impact I've had, definitely, I'm sure you do on your mentees as well, is they do raise the game and they're like, thank you for giving me that permission. You know, sometimes women need that permission. We went through whatever we did that we didn't, but others
Right.
need that, you know, so it's important. We need leaders and we need examples. So we have to
I think it's really important right now, especially we're moving into, I believe in energy and kind of different things are happening right now. We're definitely moving into more of the feminine energy. So I'm just going to ask you this next question to go to the next level. So, your future, right? Where do you see things going, in the world of the financial market, where we're going in real estate? We're in some unique times at the moment, on a global level. I think that right now, this is my take, and I want to get your take on this, is that I believe that right now we are way more in a global market than we ever have been in the history. I think that things that affect the United States affect globally. It's no longer just, well, the United States is going through this and other countries. No, it's like a global conversation. I think it's a global market, real estate. And so I wanted to get your take on kind of, I'm not saying to be a fortune teller, but I just want to get your take on kind of where we're at right now and where you see, and maybe where the opportunities are in the future.
Well, you know, there's opportunities right now. And I'm obsessed with economic cycles because that's part of my financial, education. And I read this stuff and I learn this stuff all the time. We are always going through cycles. No one could predict COVID would have given us such a bullish move in the market. And that was purely down to the fact that they printed excessive amounts to prop up the stock market, because that should have been the natural collapse. If they didn't get involved, the market crash would have happened there and then, because you're shutting down economies, you're putting people in their homes. The economy does come to a standstill, but they artificially stimulated it. So naturally, when inflation gets so high, so when you put so much money in the market, we're naturally going to have that inflation issue, the deflation of your money. So as in like your money's worth less, the inflation increases. So to control that from an economic perspective, we do need to create a downturn. So I'm actually not scared of it. But what I find is opportunities right now. So what the things I actually do are always recession proof, which is what I love. So for example, me now offering 100% bridging finance, for example, that is one of the areas. The reason I offer it now more than before is because nobody would care when you get such easy finance just a year ago from the COVID spike, right? So I always had the capacity of giving people that lending then, but they wouldn't be that interested. So now I'm doing it because one, that's how I built my real estate fortune. I bought every house using bridging finance, and I was very good at buying below market value deals. So my criteria is specific, but I give 100% lending. So if you find distressed properties, that's my area of expertise. You know, people are always going to sell a discount if they're going through a certain condition like repossession, bankruptcy, whatever, you know. And if there is a win-win, I never tell people to do this unless there is a genuine win-win you can create. But if there is, and I've been to courts and learned the law to help protect people from bankruptcy and repossessions, just to get the houses at a discount and then still let them rent it out and give them cash to go have a holiday, you know. So I help save families in some ways, you know, because people get into financial messes. And when those scenarios happen, I pick up discounted properties. So that's one opportunity aspect. There's huge amounts, and like instantly you could flip them. So another strategy is you could get the distressed property. I could give 100% lending on that, and you could then flip it, and you can make anything between 35, 50K as a minimum on flipping that deal. And you have a correct tax structure. You could pay as little tax legally. So, you know, that's one opportunity. And the other one is investing into, like, when I trade the financial markets, I trade Forex. And although it's got like this crazy reputation, and no, I don't blame it, because even I used to lose money before I got a proper mentor. And you can make money on this thing. So the beauty about Forex, when you trade the direction of a currency, you're not trading the stock. So you're not, for example, when you buy Apple stock at a certain price, or if you buy Bitcoin or whatever, and then it falls, you're worth less. You can't do anything about that. But when you're trading a direction, and that's what Forex is, you're not buying the currency, you're trading the direction between euro dollar, you know. So if euro dollar is going short, you are making money as euro drops and dollar increases in strength. It doesn't matter if it goes the other way around, you just, you know, go long, etc. So the beauty is that industry alone is recession proof. It has been ever since I touched it. And every time I teach my traders, we made money in COVID, we made money without COVID, before COVID, after COVID, during COVID. Now we made so much money. Like, it's ridiculous how much money you can make even in a recession, because that industry is recession proof. The other things, I mean, opportunity and what's going to happen next, we can never predict when the cycle of the downturn is going to turn around exactly. But I would just pick, as long as you understand risk management. For example, I'm going to be launching a trading app. And the reason why I know this is recession proof is because everybody needs to make money. Like, I've picked an industry that I know is not seasonal. Everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants to be in control of their money. So my trading app is going to be a good time to release now, last year, next year, anytime, right? Those are the things I would look at. So I'm pretty safe, I'll be honest. I don't like I wouldn't put money in crypto right now, because who knows what's going to happen. That we have to wait for some more volume, but I'm pretty safe. So I don't do the wild and wonderful stuff. And I wouldn't take a company public like next week, for example, because the stock market is still recovering, and the sentiment for adding money into raising capital in an investment banking point of view is not really attractive right now. So you understand where the market sentiment is. You know, if the investment banking world is shying away from taking companies public, you just know, okay, I'll take my company public when the markets are back to, you know, going a little bit more bullish. But there's always opportunity, you know, and I always encourage people to not wait for a recession to end, but rather find a recession-proof money-making strategy. And then there are online businesses. We haven't even talked about that, you know, so there's tons of things, stuff that you do, recession-proof. So
right. I love that. I'm right. I'm taking notes.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always learning. Like I know more than I do, and I'm on this, and so I'm always taking notes. So some things I wrote down that I think are interesting that I wanted just to tap into, that you just bring up such a great point, which is really thinking through economics. So fun story that again, I don't have a couple of things I don't really talk about. When I was in college, my like 2-3 years in, I actually was being a good girl and I was a pre-med, become a doctor, whatever. And I was going down that route and I realized quickly how bad it was to be a doctor. And I didn't really, this is during the time when here in the States, Clinton was an era and there was a lot of changes in the medical, and doctors went from making $500,000 a year to like $100,000 and 200. And it was a massive shift because of the healthcare, blah, blah. Yeah. And I saw the writing on the wall. It was in the middle of this. My grandfather was a doctor. So of course that's the direction. But now given the new economic conversation that so many people around me weren't having, and I got that information, it was like, don't do that. This is where it's headed. And I was like, wow, stop, turn. And so I remember going, they said, what do you want to do? And I remember going, this is a true story. And it's one of the stories that just irks me. And I remember going to the business department of the college university. And they're like, I really want to study economics. Like I love it. And they go, women aren't economics. And I just didn't have the balls I do now to say, well, I don't care. I was young and I was like, oh, really? Like, yeah, you can't make money in economics and women aren't in economics. Don't do that.
That's awful advice. I feel so bad for you because
I know. And I loved economics class. And so I actually ended up, if I gone back, I would definitely gone into business or gone to New York for trading because it thrilled me, but I wasn't encouraged. I was encouraged to become a doctor or become a nurse and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I wasn't encouraged to go make money, go get a degree that's going to make you money. Like I was not encouraged to do that.
Do you think it would be different if you were a guy, right?
Oh my God, completely.
And this is what I mean about the parenting or the advice we've been given from like these elders in our life.
Yeah.
This is
he was an elderly man. He was probably in his 50s or 60s at the time. He was some professor. And I sat down in his little office, like, I want economics because I still to this day geek out on like behind the scenes. What I do most of the day based beyond my business is like geek out on economics because it's fascinating to me what's going on with the millennials. Are they having children? Like there's all these stats.
Absolutely.
Right? That like, oh, are they going to buy houses? Some of them don't want to buy houses, like all these new directions that have completely changed the trajectory of our future. And we're no longer in just the United States, we're in a global conversation. There's so many people I know that have left. They've gone to Puerto Rico, they've gone to Mexico, that are expats. And I'm not talking about like 20-year-olds. I'm talking like 60 years old, 50 years old, 40-year-olds. I know a ton of friends that have said, screw it, I'm out. They're all in Puerto Rico or Mexico, all expats. So that's a complete trajectory change in the economics of our country and globally. And I think that that's a huge conversation that I don't get to have. I have in my head, by myself.
I know, it's amazing that you
with the TV
care about that, because you're very right. Looking at these global trends or the geopolitical stress, as sometimes they call it, is so important, especially when you're like an investment banker. And I speak to a lot of hedge funds because I get a news report, like I get an email. I'm on an email chain that only 60 banks in the whole world get, including JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. And I'm not a bank, I'm just a human being, but I know the traders and the fund owner, and they're the best bond traders on the planet, I'd have to argue. And they supply information to all of these big banks. I get the newsletter, I read that, and I'm constantly getting, so I can understand where your, excitement is, because I get excited with that.
So I'm such a dork. Yeah,
good, but these things matter because, for example, like when I'm going to take a company public, or I know the appetite of fintech versus biotech, I have to be obsessive about these things. And I also understand, I'm not even in the clothing industry, but I have friends who are billionaires in the clothing industry, and I understand what affects their industry, so I keep an eye open for these things. That's what I'm always like. So learning something in a 360 way is very good. And I encourage more people, let alone women, to do that. So you're a natural you could have been a really good, and you probably can still be a good investment banker.
Oh my God, I would so love that. I'm ready for a change. It's time. I think honestly it was a confidence issue because I was not encouraged. I do believe that women are probably really good traders.
Yes.
I've heard that before,
Yeah.
but I didn't hear that until my 30s, and at that point it was like I'm going down this whole other trajectory. But I think now I'm just confident enough that I don't really care what people say, but my automatic is to go there. My automatic is to go economics and to go with what's going, like here in the States, I'm in Florida. There's a lot of changes going specifically in this very small area called Florida because of COVID, because of blah, 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 the economics and the change. And of course we had a huge hurricane and there's a massive change in the real estate industry right now because of the hurricane. So I look at that stuff, like I'm automatically going, okay, the trends and so it's interesting. But just going back to you for a second on the Fortune Academy, there's so many different things happening right now with opportunity. Where do you, I mean, if there is a woman listening, there's a lot of women listening, but there's a woman listening going, I want to do this. What would be their first step? What would be their first step to say, I want to do this. I'm raising my hand. How the hell do I do this? How much time would it take? How much time do I really need to invest in this? 30, 40, 50 hours a week? And how much investment do they need to get started?
Well, the beauty is that I always do preview events. So the first thing I tell anyone who wants to learn more about what I do or anything in terms of the education is follow my Instagram, since I push that a lot, or my LinkedIn. But Instagram is very easy. It's at Hither Mann. So I think they can see the spelling. If not, Hither, Hither as in come hither, Mann, Mann. And it's got a blue tick. So there are loads of people using my picture. So please don't, get fooled with their scam profiles, because it's so annoying. People do that to everyone, I think. And then from there, just go to the link in bio, because in the link in bio, we have the latest free events that are happening. And that's always there. So, jump on the next one, which is going to be probably, I do 2 or 3 free events a month. And that is a nice preview for people to kind of see, okay, if you're interested, come to the event. That is the big event, which is normally a ticketed event, not expensive, but enough to get a high quality audience in there. And then I will be teaching you something that is very current. So stuff that because I'm a very active business person and investor, I'm actually got the title venture capitalist. That's my official title as in Monaco. So I constantly teach people what I'm doing with my investment strategy, with my own liquid cash. And that way people can mirror it. I even raise capital for their ventures if they need to. One day I want to have my own venture fund. I pretty much do that anyway. I have my own fund doing bridging, but I also invest in companies and people ultimately. And that's where I have an incubation program. I do a Monte Carlo training where I mentor you, make you like this bulletproof money-making machine. And then I will invest into your company, raise capital with it. I bring my network of family offices, banks around you, and we just make money together. So that's what we do in a nutshell. The financial trading element is a separate element, but it's just as exciting. But yeah, ultimately I make you guys manage your own money, or at least have an investment banking approach, because I have something called the Billionaire Project, which is the executive side of the Fortune Academy. And the Billionaire Project should have a slogan: investment banking made simple for everyone, because that's what I'm teaching. I'm teaching people how to look at investments in a private equity manner, taking it public, but just having that like no fear, people feel like you've got to go through this crazy Ivy League university first, and to some extent that would help, but it is not essential, because I can teach you the whole how to do it right now. And we have clients from all around the world, really impressive individuals that want to take their companies public, or just want to make a net worth of 100 million. Then the next aim is 500 million, and then we go from there. So we do things like that, which is fun.
I love it. That's great. Where can they start? Where can they find you?
So Instagram would be my first. So at Hither Mann. I honestly prefer that one because I use it the most. I'm quite interactive. If not, I am at Hither Mann on everything else: Facebook, LinkedIn. But I like my Instagram a lot more because I use it all the time. But I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Well, that's where I found you. That's where I officially stalked you, was Instagram. So you've got a great Instagram. I want to acknowledge that. Well, I just love how open you are about this. I think that's something that's really refreshing.
And what do you mean by open? Because that's good feedback. I love that. But what do you think that people hold back on normally?
Well, in my experience, and I'm generalizing, of course, but inside of like the money situation or let's call it economics, those kinds of things, it's almost as if, and because I've reached out to other people, not women in that market. In my experience, they just like don't want to tell you. They don't want to tell you the secrets, or they don't want to tell you the truth,
Yeah.
or it's like they just want to treat you like you're just stupid.
You know what? That is so important. You mentioned that because it
Like
is.
you're just dumb, like, oh, little girl, just okay, you're just, I'm so above you.
Yeah.
And I think that's been my experience. And so it's only recently, and I think that's one of the reasons why I lovingly, I keep calling it stalking, lovingly stalked you, lovingly looked at you and followed you and went down the rabbit holes, because I'm like, is this possible that I could actually learn in an environment that I can actually really learn,
Yeah.
coming from just learning and desiring and being mentored versus being like, shunned to the corner.
Oh,
And
100%. And this
yeah,
is consciously what I wanted to do. So I really appreciate that feedback, because there's no other reason for me to ever be a public speaker and mentor, because it was only for that purpose, to democratize wealth, which
yeah,
literally means that everyone from any background can be super wealthy if they want to. And of course, raising the women's profile as well. So I love that feedback. And I purposely want to be really open with it. And you're right, because I hate it when people hold the secrets, because that's why people don't understand why rich get richer. And I want to make everyone, I started from a very humble beginning. So I feel like I'm always just, a normal person. But as I've become wealthier, I want to forever share like the secrets, because if I can do it, well, I hope others
yeah,
can also be inspired. So that's my
yeah. Well,
mission.
I'm excited to learn from you. So I'm excited that other people are going to get to learn from you. And so make sure you do follow Hither on her Instagram. I'm going to speak it out just in case someone's just auditory listening. It's HITHERMANN on Instagram. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. But more importantly, she's smart and sassy and rich. And I think that's really important. I think it's important. It's okay to be smart, sassy, beautiful, and rich, and
Yeah.
to be a provider for yourself and others as a woman. There's a lot of conversation on Buzz recently, someone talking about man versus woman gender stuff. And at the end of the day, all that's political and whatever around gender, sexuality, and sensuality. And that's all great. But at the end of the day, we are a human being. And I think that being a person of wealth and being a person of means is a very positive and loving thing, because when you're a provider for yourself, it's in that moment you can provide for others. So I think it's an important tool to have.
I love that. Yes, please encourage more women. I think you're doing an amazing job. I love women like you. There's not many, but in my lifetime, I'm gonna find as many as I can like you. And similarly, you should be just pulling up these conversations as often as possible, because these are the ones that change real lives, for the women on the fence thinking, should I wait for something to happen, or should I just do it now? And hopefully that do it now is going to resonate a lot more than waiting for permission. So
Yes. Be a provider. Like that's my thing right now, is like that whole energy of being a provider. I think it's really interesting that your father, subconsciously or consciously, whatever, he put that into your energy field.
yeah.
And wealth is energy in multiple ways. So super awesome. Where's a website? Is there a particular website that they can find
Yes.
out more about your events?
Yeah, of course. Fortune Academy. So it's www.fortuneacademy.co.uk, because it's UK based. And from there, it'll give you a general idea of what I do, etc. But to be honest, and if you go on there, look at the events too. But everything is on social media. Most of my audience does come not from the website, but from social media. So I'm very active there. And I hope I get to interact with you guys on that as well. So feel free to comment and DM. I do read some of them, but majority of my team are very good. They get back to as many of you, well, all of you that are, genuine people that are asking for the real. So,
I'm sure you get your disgenuine, and don't stalk her like I'm talking about. I'm talking lovingly follow her. I just like that. So
no, but I think it's a good idea too. I actually encourage people to follow me before they come to my events, because
yeah,
and stalk me or whatever you need to, because you get an idea of what I'm about and the kind of the culture I'm creating in Fortune Academy and the Billionaire Project. So you know, your expectations are either going to be met, or, I mean, there are some women, I have to admit, that will be far too intimidated. And I don't think you attract many of those, because if they love you, then hopefully they like me too, because I respect women like you a lot. But you know, there are going to be some that will be like, oh, it's too much or whatever. So I think people should always follow on social. Yeah.
I think that's what social to me is about. You know, I learned a lot about you, your principles, your life, what your viewpoints were from following your social media. And I think that's really important. Like before I even reached out to your team, I wanted to know who I was going to be speaking to, and or who was I really asking on to come on my show. And then if you said no, you said no. Like I was not attached to it, but I was also like really interested in wanting to serve, but also support and help and lift another woman up and acknowledge you. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that, right? And so that was my intention. I was like, well, I'm just gonna acknowledge her, and hopefully her team gets back to me, and I think she's awesome, and hopefully she comes onto my show, and I want to potentially work with her, and let's go down further the relationship. And that's how you network online. I mean, we're you know, many miles and 1,000 miles away, but that's how you network online. And I think that's something that it's a skill that I learned and that a lot of women don't do. So just want to say thank you for.
Oh no, thank you. And I 100% want to do a collaboration. We definitely will resonate in many ways. So for sure, we can follow up on that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the show right here. So make sure that you follow Hither on all of her all of her social media, but specifically Instagram, because it is a beautiful page. And the Instagram is HITHERMANN, Hither Mann. Hither, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you do follow the show at uncaged.show. We are on all the different wonderful networks around the world. And we're also on 29 different radio stations here in the United States. Thank you guys. My name is Heather Havenwood, and I appreciate you listening.